When I see a black man and one man, I think of strength, black empowerment we have within, building community development. Let's continue to build our own. Let's continue to stay strong. Motivation, no matter the hate, no stopping. You just go. Listen up to Quan, John, and Queen P for giving us a voice. Speak up for what's yours and yell and make that noise. We are kings and we are queens. Melanated royalty, just getting started. Loving self, self and knowledge. Stack that wealth. Motivational motors, y'all.
Booyah, back at you, Motivational Motors, where we speak to inspirational black people who've overcome adversity en route to prosperity. Portia Mystique, what's up, baby? What's going on with you? Yeah.
I'm good.
Got your boy Quan John here. We got a very, very, very special guest. We got my man, my newfound friend, my brother from another mother, extra large professor. He is a professor of English. He studies fatherhood and narratives of hip hop. Say what up, Professor. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, y'all? What up, young scholars? It's your boy, the extra large professor, getting down with the crew, one of the illest crew in the podcast game. So happy to be here.
Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you. So, yo, let's just first let's dive right into it. Next question. You know, you as a professor of English, as a black man, as a professor of English on a college level, you know, me being college educated, having a few degrees under my belt, I've never had a black English professor in my life.
What?
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. So I just want to know, let us know about your background. What led up to this epiphany of, yo, I'm going to be a college professor straight up and down. What was the life like leading up to, you know, your decision of becoming a professor of English?
Okay, awesome. Well, first and foremost, I want to say, you know, I'm glad you brought up that point because really the truth is that most only black male educators as a whole only make up 2% of all educators. So your chances of finding a black professor is slim to none. So basically for people of color, African Americans only make up 20% of education, but out of that 20%, only 2% is African American.
Right.
Wow.
Then you go into, when you get up to the PhD level, it's like only 5% of us are people of color. So, you know, so with that being said, first and foremost, my becoming a professor was like a long journey in a sense that when I was growing up, they actually, because I had a speech impediment, they placed me in special ed classes and that sort of thing. And it wasn't because of intellect. It was just the fact that when you're growing up as a young man in the projects, it's like, it's trauma. And so, you know, and people who stutter, it's like your thoughts are moving faster than you can verbalize it, but they didn't really understand that. And so, so right away, I knew that I always had something that I had to say, but I wasn't able to get that out. Right. So I would say what really got me on my journey into English was I was a part of the desegregation program when I got into sixth grade. And in that particular program, being the first African-American in my family to go to quote unquote integrated school, I went in there and I'll say I had this one white friend and he was, you know, he only had one leg, that sort of thing. And I remember everybody loved him. He was well respected. And then one day he just said, hey, he looked over at his other white friend and watched this. Jesse, you're a nigger. I don't know if you could say the N-word on the show, but
that's cool.
Jesse, you're the N-word. And
right.
So that particular day, I went to the principal. I was like, you know, this guy said this. And I remember him saying, boys will be boys.
Oh,
I mean, this is like 80s, 90s. They did not care about Black people. So still, you know, so I remember that particular day I went home and I really would start listening to like Public Enemy, KRS-One. And then that led me to really starting to like really get into reading Malcolm X, Black Panthers. And then X connected with me. And when I started reading the story of Malcolm X, it was like, man, this is the same guy. He had some inner city life. He knew what it was like to be kind of viewed as the pat in the class, being called the N-word and all of that. And it just really lit a fire into me to want to learn more about what they weren't teaching me. And so I started following what Malcolm was talking about, being self-educated. I refused to read what they were teaching me, and I was becoming self-educated. So I, was getting C's and D's all the way up to the 10th grade. But anytime a teacher would challenge me, I was like, no, I know, and I was reading Eldridge Cleaver's Sold on Ice, all of these different type of things. And it just inspired me. So years later, I didn't know that I wanted to go into English. All I knew is that I had a son coming, and I'm a young dad. And I was like, I knew growing up fatherless and my mom working 3 or 4 jobs, whatever I do, I wanted to make sure that I'm in a job where I don't take out my frustrations on my seed. I want to be a better person. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So one day I was figuring like, I want to go to college. I want to make a better life. And so I saw Jada Pinkett before she was Will Smith on It's a Different World. Right. And she had lied about a scholarship for engineering, but they said they gave her a degree in English. They gave her an English, scholarship. And I was like, people can get paid for like reading and doing that stuff. And I was like, I just never heard of that kind of stuff. And so I decided to go to school, and I had this Black male professor that became a spiritual father for me. And he really took me on his wing, and he was like, you know what, Jesse, like the people who you admire were professors, educators. You should consider joining the ranks of that. And because it was the first Black male that really saw something in me, it really paved my way to becoming an English professor. So, that's my journey, and how I became a professor is, having those stories from hip hop and then fatherhood that led me to my career as a professor in African Diaspora Studies / English from University of Mizzou.
Interesting, man. And you know what? You are, once again, Portia, we have someone that's the epitome of what the objective of motivational motives is. You are someone that took a bad situation and turned it into a tremendous successful outcome. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? That is the fundamental objective of motivational motives, showing our Black viewers and our Black people that, hey, yes, you can be in a very dismal situation, you understand? Yeah. But you yourself have the power of perspective and to change that into this great, this blossoming tree of wealth. You understand? So I commend you for that. And while you were speaking, there were 1,000 questions going through my mind. Portia, give me 1 minute. You know what I'm saying? I just want to ask you as a person, because I actually am a person with a quote unquote disability. I'm actually legally blind in both eyes, Professor. You understand? But as I've said in various podcasts, had it not be for this vision or lack of, I wouldn't have the incomparable vision that I have. You understand? So had I had 20/20, I would not be the Quan John that sits before both of you guys today. So I ask you, as a person that had a quote unquote speech impediment, quote unquote disability, what type of advice would you give a parent that has a child that has a speech impediment or maybe a learning disability? What type of advice would you give them when the school system tries to throw the special education component at them?
Well, first and foremost, I would say always get numerous opinions. With my sons, I actually have twin boys, both of them 16, and both of them had speech issues as well. But I just knew right away that they didn't need to be placed in any classes, just just get them to a speech therapist. And I would say work in unison with your school. A lot of times my biggest concern with a lot of parents, and I would say in particular, a lot of parents of color, we have to make our presence known. Like you have to constantly be in your child's your child's teacher's emails, the principal email. You have to just show up randomly so that they can know that your child is not one of those kids that's a throwaway kid.
That's
and
right.
Also, in whenever is something that goes down, I would say the power of the written manifesto means everything. For example,
Absolutely.
I would say a lot of people, like for instance, my oldest son pulled some barrettes out of a girl hair. He's in kindergarten, right?
Okay.
But they allowed, the school allowed the parent teacher, who was the parent of the little girl, to confront him.
Really?
And say
That's
crazy
conflict
stuff.
of interest.
So, so my wife at the time, she's like Eve,
she wasn't having
a pit bull in the skirt. She wanted
she wasn't having.
She wanted to go up there and lay hands. It's like, no, What I did was I looked up harassment on the school system and what they say their policy was. And I wrote this dope letter that was talking about, if this is the policies that you all stand on with students harassing other students, how much so for an adult to harass a child? Can you imagine the trauma? Man, that's
well put.
Them. They in this town, they was like, "Are you a lawyer? Do you have?"
You about to lawyer up? That's what they said.
Right?
You're gonna lawyer up.
I was like, no. They were looking at this Negro's clever.
Uh-huh.
Wow. So I would say that to parents, make sure that you are active at your kid's school, you're emailing, but also whenever it's a confrontation, do not go into the verbal jousting or verbal spunk. Just write it. The written word has more power. So, do it that way. And I think your kid, and then other than that, just let your child know that doesn't define them. Whatever the limitation that society has, it doesn't define.
Touche. Absolutely. Well put. Portia.
I just wanted to say first, going back to what you said the first time about reading Malcolm X, shout out, because today's Malcolm X Day, because it's May 19th. It's his birthday. So happy Malcolm X Day.
King. Salute.
But secondly, what really captivated me was the fact that you were talking about you didn't grow up with a father, and what we talked about in the the lack of presence of patriarchy in the projects. We talked about the fact that a man who grows up without a father, in order to become a good man, would have to find a father figure. And so that was one of the debates we had, and the thing that I was unsure about. I was like, well, does a man actually have to have a father figure in his life to become a good man? And turns out it does. And you were just proof of that. And you said you found your spiritual father in your professor, and so that he took you under your wing, and that's how you became who you are. So I just thought that was very interesting. That was very interesting that you said that. And like, okay, there it is. There's the proof. Like, we were debating it in the podcast, but there is the proof. A man needs another man to become a man.
I totally agree. And I would say it's kind of like, if when we look at like West African traditions and that sort of thing, in most West African cultures, there is a sort of ceremony, a rites of passage into manhood. Is many of us, try to incorporate that And you know, in our Black Greek life, if you're a member of a fraternity or a sorority and that sort of thing, it's basically saying that you come in who you are as an aspirant, but then you go through this sort of ritual or rites of passage, and that ushers you into manhood. So I would say for me, I needed the social cues of what it meant to be a man, and you know, that sort of thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I would say, and the reason why I love hip hop, especially from the era that I grew up in, the 80s and 90s, it allowed us, like Jay-Z said in Decoded, to find our fathers on wax. So I was able to take pieces of BDP philosophy, X-Clan, Public Enemy, Ice Cube, and I was able to take all of those narratives, and I was like an empty container. I just poured that into me, shook it up, and that became part of who I was. But I needed something tangible. I needed someone that was in my face that I could talk to, that could say, you know, this is what you need to become a man. And seeing that brother, Dr. Brian Carter, he, you know, just kind of took me. And I remember, it's so funny, like my first interaction with him, I really wanted to confront him and go hard at him, because I was writing a paper for him, and I was arrogant. I was like, I could write, you know, that sort of thing. He kept giving me C's or whatever. Well, I don't want to say kept giving me, I kept earning C's.
Yeah.
So I remember I was, you know, coming, because, you know, you grow up in a city, you deal with conflict like, yo, what's up? You know, but, you know, I came to him, I was like, I don't even understand why I'm getting this C. Everybody. And he's like, what you failed to, he said, you're brilliant. And what you have to say is, you know, is where it should be. But he was like, you have to understand, your voice is not the only one. He said, your voice as a writer should harmonize with the other voices that came before you. So he was like, so yeah, you can have like a foundation, what you're saying, but if you don't have or pay honor to by quoting the authors that came before you, that sort of thing, he said, it's about harmony. You're not doing this on your own. And when he taught me it, when he showed me that, and then I was like, wow, I do need to pay homage to the people before me. And so it became like writing for me is like a spiritual process of call and response. It's like I call out to the ancestors that come before me, and then I speak out to them. They speak back to me. It's this back and forth. And in the same way, that's hip hop. You throw the old jazz loops, James Brown loops, the old music, and then it's like the old generation is speaking back to the new generation in this conversation. So I needed that to form who I was as a man. I needed to have someone to get me through a rites of passage so I could know who I was supposed to be as a man.